Hello, my sleepy heads. It's good to have you back on History for Sleep. In the following minutes, you will experience a deep state of relaxation. This story helps you to easily sleep through the night, so you can get up energized in the morning. Not only will you fall asleep faster, you will also get rid of disturbing thoughts. Listen to these history stories for at least 10 days for the best results. The longer you listen to the video, the more likely you'll experience persistent and positive changes in the way you sleep. I wish you a great rest, and if you haven't already, we'd be very happy if you consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss any new calming and relaxing history story. Tonight, we're going to gently travel back in time, far beyond kingdoms and empires, into an age more ancient than memory itself. Life 2.4 million years ago was a world of open plains, scattered forests, and early humans learning, step by step, how to survive. A place where every sunrise carried both challenge and hope, and where survival was shaped by the land, the animals, and the slow rhythm of nature. Over the next couple of hours, we'll imagine what a single day might have been like for these first humans. Their search for food and water, the tools they crafted, the families they protected, and the quiet moments beneath the stars of a prehistoric sky. But before you get comfortable and let your mind drift into this prehistoric world, I'd love it if you could take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if these calm stories of the past bring you peace. Your support truly helps me grow and keep making these calm journey through time just for you. And in the comments, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always so wonderful to see our little community listening together from all corners of the world, quietly sharing these stories across space and time. So, settle in, take a slow breath, and let us step quietly into a world 2.4 million years ago, where every sunrise brought both challenge and hope, and every sunset carried the story of survival. Now let us begin. Imagine the very first light of dawn, breaking softly over a world 2.4 million years ago. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and wild grasses, and the only sounds are the distant calls of waking animals and the whisper of wind across the open plain. Before us lies a world untouched by cities or roads, a landscape stretching endlessly, dotted with scattered trees and low shrubs, with rolling hills in the distance. In this ancient silence, a small group of early humans stirs from rest. They are not yet the people we know today, but among our earliest ancestors, beings who lived each day guided by instinct, survival, and the rhythm of nature. Their day begins not with clocks or alarms, but with the warmth of the sun slowly rising on the horizon, promising light, safety, and the energy needed to endure another day of life in a wild and unpredictable world. These early humans, often associated with species like Homo habilis, lived in small, tight-knit groups. They had no permanent homes, only temporary resting places near water or sheltered beneath rock outcrops, chosen for safety during the night. As the sky turns from gray to soft gold, they rise cautiously, scanning the landscape before stepping fully into the open. The night has always been dangerous, filled with predators whose sharp eyes and stronger senses thrive in the dark. Dawn, however, brings a kind of fragile relief, a signal that visibility is returning and that danger might be easier to spot. Still, the early morning hours remain uncertain. Survival required constant alertness, a quiet awareness of the world, and a close reliance on one another. With the group slowly awakening, the first tasks of the day begin. They stretch, shake off the stiffness of sleep, and look toward the places where food and water might be found. Unlike us, they had no stored supplies, no cupboards or granaries to rely upon. Every day was a new beginning, a reset in the endless cycle of survival. The morning's focus was immediate, searching for berries, roots, insects, and perhaps the remains of a carcass left behind by larger predators. Hunger was not an occasional discomfort, but a constant companion, shaping every thought and action. And yet, in this stillness, there is also a sense of quiet connection. They lived in rhythm with the earth itself, breathing in step with the winds, listening for the calls of birds as signs of safety or warning. The landscape of this prehistoric morning was both beautiful and harsh. Wide plains stretched endlessly, with tall grasses shimmering in the early light. Herds of ancient animals moved slowly in the distance, some grazing peacefully, others more dangerous, watchful, and fierce. The humans moved carefully, never drawing too much attention to themselves. They had no walls to hide behind, no weapons strong enough to guarantee protection, only simple stone tools, sharp flakes chipped from river rocks, fragile yet effective in cutting plants or scraping meat. As the sun climbed higher, shadows shortened, and warmth spread over the land, bringing with it both energy and new risks. The day had begun, and with it came countless challenges to endure. The emotional world of these early humans was shaped by such mornings. Though they lacked language as we know it, their gestures, sounds, and expressions revealed bonds of care and trust. The group moved together, sharing in the tasks of survival, the elders teaching the young where to look for food or how to recognize the warning calls of animals. There was comfort in numbers, in the closeness of community, even when life itself was uncertain. Each dawn was a reminder that they had survived another night, and that survival was not guaranteed for the day to come. Yet within that uncertainty lay resilience, a quiet strength that carried them forward, one sunrise at a time, generation after generation. As the prehistoric morning unfolded, the early humans began their slow journey across the land, drawn by instinct and memory to the places that offered nourishment and safety. Their movements were deliberate, shaped by the knowledge passed down through observation and repetition. While to us, their world may seem harsh and unforgiving, to them it was simply life, an unbroken cycle of light and dark, of hunger and relief, of risk and reward. Each morning carried echoes of the countless mornings before, just as it carried the seeds of all mornings yet to come. And so, as the sun lifted higher in the ancient sky, painting the earth in warmth and color. Our ancestors pressed forward, fragile, enduring, and forever bound to the rhythms of nature. As the day unfolded in that distant world, the question of shelter was never far from the minds of early humans. Unlike us, they had no permanent houses, no solid walls to return to at the end of each day. Instead, they lived in a state of constant adaptation, moving with the seasons, following water and food, always seeking a place that could offer even a moment of safety. A simple overhang of rock could provide protection from wind and rain, while the low branches of a tree might shield them from the harsh sun. In some regions, caves became their most valuable havens, not only keeping them dry, but also giving them a defensible position against predators. These caves, dark and echoing, must have seemed both comforting and mysterious, a place of safety, but also of unknown shadows. To our ancestors, shelter was never permanent, but always essential, a fragile balance between exposure and protection. The importance of finding or creating safe resting places cannot be overstated. At night, the world belonged to predators, saber-toothed cats, hyenas, and massive scavengers roamed freely, their senses far sharper than those of humans. A group without shelter was vulnerable, unable to defend itself in the darkness. Even by day, storms or sudden weather shifts could make the open plains dangerous, chilling the body and draining strength. Shelter offered a pause, a chance to regroup, to share warmth, and to plan the next movements. Yet, in this age, humans had not yet mastered building in the way later societies would. They had no wooden huts or woven roofs. Instead, they relied on nature's offerings, a hollowed tree trunk, a cluster of tall grasses bent into a windbreak, or a natural cave carved by water and time. These became their homes, however temporary, shaping their patterns of movement and their sense of belonging to the land. Archaeological discoveries give us glimpses of these early shelters. In East Africa, where many of the oldest human remains have been found, caves and rock shelters show traces of habitation dating back millions of years. Simple stone tools, animal bones, and ash from natural fires suggest that groups gathered there repeatedly, returning to the same spots as long as they remained safe and resourceful. Imagine a group huddled in such a space at night, pressed close together for warmth, the older ones at the edges, keeping watch while the youngest rested in the center. Their sense of security came not from sturdy walls, but from community, many eyes and ears attuned to danger, many bodies adding warmth against the cold. For them, shelter was not a single place, but a practice, a way of learning which places offered safety and which carried hidden risks. The choice of shelter often depended on the environment. In areas of open savanna, where trees and caves were scarce, groups may have used brush and fallen branches to create makeshift barriers. These were not permanent constructions, but temporary nests, offering a sense of enclosure against the vast openness of the plains. In more wooded regions, tree canopies provided cover from rain and shade from the relentless sun. Riversides, though rich in water, carried their own risks: crocodiles, insects, and predators who came to drink. Thus, the search for shelter was a delicate calculation, weighing safety against resource availability. This daily challenge shaped the intelligence and adaptability of early humans, forcing them to observe their environment carefully and to make decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. Beyond physical safety, shelters carried emotional weight. In the dim stillness of a cave, with echoes bouncing softly from stone walls, there may have been a sense of belonging, a space that felt like home, even if only for a few days. These shelters allowed for moments of rest, for the gentle rhythms of family life to unfold, nursing children, sharing food, grooming one another's hair, or simply lying together as the sounds of the outside world faded into the distance. For early humans, who lived under constant uncertainty, the simple act of resting within a sheltered space would have been deeply comforting, a rare chance to feel momentarily protected from the wild. In this way, the concept of shelter was not just survival, but also a foundation for early social bonds, for closeness, and for the beginnings of what we might think of as a human sense of home. As the sun dipped each evening, the need for shelter grew urgent. The fading light brought with it the most dangerous hours, when hunters of the night began to stir. Groups would retreat into caves, crowd beneath overhangs, or gather behind barriers of brush, drawing closer together as the darkness deepened. Here, the day's journey paused, and the rhythm of life slowed to a quiet heartbeat. This reliance on shelter, on finding safety within the folds of the earth or beneath the arms of trees, was a constant reminder of the fragility of life. And yet, it was also a symbol of endurance. Each morning, they emerged again into the light, ready to face the uncertainties of a new day. In this fragile cycle of exposure and protection, our ancestors not only survived, but laid the first stones of what would one day become the human tradition of building homes, villages, and cities. For now, their shelters were simple, fleeting, and shaped by the land. But within them, the story of human resilience was already being written. With the day's light fully spread across the land, the central task of early humans began: the search for food. For our ancestors 2.4 million years ago, every dawn brought with it the same urgent question: where and how would nourishment be found today? There were no stores, no stockpiles, and no certainty. Survival depended on keen observation, memory of past discoveries, and a willingness to explore. The group moved slowly through the landscape, eyes scanning the ground for berries ripening on bushes, roots to dig, or edible leaves hidden among the grass. This gathering was not random, but guided by knowledge passed on through experience. The elders remembered where fruit trees had grown in seasons before, or where certain plants flourished after rains. The children watched and learned, storing away lessons they would one day need. Every step was part of a rhythm, slow, deliberate, and deeply connected to the earth's offerings. But plants alone could not always sustain them. Protein, fat, and marrow were crucial for survival, and so the group also searched for other sources of nourishment. They examined the ground for signs of small animals, burrows, tracks, or disturbed earth. Sometimes, sharp-eyed spotted lizards, birds, or rodents that could be caught with quick reflexes and simple tools. More often, the early humans relied on scavenging the remains of animals killed by larger predators. A carcass left behind was both an opportunity and a risk, for lions, hyenas, or saber-toothed cats might still be near. With crude stone tools, they could cut meat or crack bones to reach the nutrient-rich marrow inside. This practice, though dangerous, was a lifeline. It placed them within the web of nature not as dominant hunters, but as clever opportunists, adapting to what the land provided. Each find was celebrated, each mouthful shared among the group, for cooperation was their greatest tool of all. Foraging required patience. The group might walk for hours, bending low to examine plants, scratching at the earth with sticks, or lifting stones in search of insects. Termites, ants, and grubs were plentiful, and though they might seem unappealing to us today, they were dense in protein and easy to gather. To these early humans, every source of energy mattered, no matter how small. When a patch of berries was discovered, there was a quiet joy, hands moving quickly, fruits eaten fresh or carried carefully to share with those too young or weak to forage themselves. The act of gathering was not only about food, but also about connection. The group moved as one, speaking in simple sounds, pointing, gesturing, teaching the young by example. Even in this daily struggle, there was a kind of gentle rhythm, a way of living in harmony with the land's hidden gifts. The dangers of food gathering were ever present. Tall grasses could conceal predators, and the act of bending low, focused on plants, could make one vulnerable. Groups relied on alertness. Some foraged while others kept watch, scanning the horizon for movement. Rivers and watering holes, rich with edible plants and fish, were also treacherous. Crocodiles lurked beneath the surface, and large animals claimed these spaces as their own. Yet these areas could not be ignored, for they were vital sources of sustenance. In these moments, survival was a balancing act, to risk hunger by staying away, or to risk danger by approaching. The choices made in such places shaped the fate of the group, reminding us how fragile survival was in this ancient world. And yet, despite the hardships, they endured day after day, adapting to the challenges set before them. The creation and use of early stone tools gave humans a crucial advantage in their quest for food. Though simple, these sharp flakes allowed them to slice meat, scrape hides, and access marrow from bones too tough to break with teeth alone. Imagine them sitting in a circle, chipping stone against stone, sparks flying, until a jagged edge was formed. These tools, carried carefully from place to place, extended the reach of their hands and teeth, making survival just a little more secure. The process of tool use was slow, deliberate, and often communal, as members of the group watched, learned, and passed fragments of stone to one another. These tools, though primitive by our standards, marked a profound step in human evolution, the first whispers of technology, born not from luxury, but from necessity. By late afternoon, the day's search for food would determine the group's fate. If successful, they returned to their shelter with full stomachs and enough to share. If the land had been unkind, they might face another night of hunger, conserving their strength for the journey ahead. Yet even in hardship, there was resilience. They learned to stretch what they had, to return to fruitful places when the seasons allowed, to follow the herds and the rains. Over generations, this knowledge wove itself into their instincts, shaping their survival strategies and binding them ever closer to the natural world. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the plain, the group carried with them not just the food they had gathered, but also the memory of survival. Another day endured, another step in the unbroken story of human resilience. If food was the heartbeat of survival, water was its lifeblood. For early humans living 2.4 million years ago, the search for water shaped their movements, their shelters, and their very way of life. A day without food could be endured, but a day without water brought weakness, confusion, and danger. The group knew, instinctively and through experience, where water might be found. Low-lying valleys, riverbeds that still held trickles from past rains, and pools that collected in rocky hollows after storms. These places were both vital and unpredictable. Sometimes, after long journeys, a river would be nothing but a cracked bed of dry earth, shimmering under the sun. At other times, the water would be plentiful, cool, and refreshing, filling the air with the scent of wet soil. To approach such places was both a relief and a risk, for water drew not only humans, but every creature of the ancient world. The rivers of that time were wild and untamed, cutting across vast savannas and feeding into marshes and lakes that supported an entire ecosystem. Along their banks, tall grasses grew thick and fruit-bearing trees flourished, making them natural magnets for life. Herds of prehistoric antelope and zebra-like animals would gather to drink, while massive elephants, towering with tusks longer than a man's height, churned the earth as they passed. But for humans, rivers were not only sources of drinking water. They were also places of opportunity. Here they could find fish trapped in shallow pools, shellfish clinging to rocks, and edible plants thriving in moist soil. Even the bones of animals that came to drink might be scavenged for marrow. The rivers were generous, but generosity was always shadowed by peril. Danger was never far from the water's edge. Crocodiles, immense and ancient, slid silently beneath the surface, waiting for the unwary. Big cats stalked the shade of trees near watering holes, knowing that sooner or later prey would come to drink. Hyenas and packs of wild dogs prowled the edges, their laughter like calls echoing across the plain. For early humans, the act of drinking required watchfulness. Groups approached the river with caution, sending some ahead to scan the area while others waited with the children at a distance. Even the sound of water, so soothing to us now, would have carried tension for them, a reminder that refreshment could come at great cost. And yet, without water, there was no survival. Each visit was an act of courage, a careful negotiation with nature's beauty and its unforgiving threats. Beyond their necessity, rivers and landscapes shaped the very path of human evolution. It is believed that the earliest migrations of our ancestors were guided by waterways, which provided food, vegetation, and a natural compass through otherwise unmarked plains. These routes allowed groups to expand, to encounter new territories, and eventually to spread across continents. The landscapes surrounding the rivers were as varied as they were vast. In some regions, wide grasslands stretched endlessly beneath the open sky. In others, forests pressed close, filled with the sounds of birds and the rustle of unseen animals. Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks sometimes capped with snow, while valleys carried echoes of wind and rushing water. To the humans of that age, these landscapes were not simply scenery. They were teachers, providers, and at times, merciless judges. The relationship between humans and water extended beyond survival into the beginnings of observation and memory. A group that found a plentiful spring would mark it in their minds, returning again and again as seasons shifted. In time, these patterns created the first threads of knowledge passed between generations. Where to find water when the rains failed, which rivers teemed with fish, and which pools dried too quickly to be trusted. This was wisdom carved not in books, but in lived experience, preserved in gestures, sounds, and the careful watching of elders by the young. Around these water sources, moments of rest and connection unfolded. Children splashed their hands in the shallows. Adults shared the labor of gathering plants. The riverbanks became quiet centers of community, where survival and togetherness intertwined. As the day waned, the rivers and landscapes of prehistory offered a final reminder of both abundance and fragility. The same waters that quenched thirst might, at night, draw predators that prowled the darkness. The same landscapes that sheltered them could also expose them to danger. Yet through this balance, humans learned resilience. The rivers etched pathways into the land, just as they etched survival into the minds of those who depended on them. Standing on the banks as the sun sank low, the early humans may have gazed at their reflection shimmering in the water, an ancient face lit by fire-colored skies, bound to the earth in ways both timeless and profound. In these rivers, in these landscapes, lay the silent story of endurance, written long before the first words were spoken. Fire, to us today, is ordinary, something we can summon with the flick of a match or the turn of a stove knob. But to early humans 2.4 million years ago, fire was both a mystery and a gift of nature. They did not yet know how to create it for themselves. Instead, they encountered it in the wild, crackling across the savanna during lightning storms, spreading through dry grasses, and leaving behind the scent of smoke in the air. To see fire was to witness something powerful, frightening, and beyond their control. Its warmth, its destructive force, and the way it transformed the landscape left an imprint on their daily lives, even if they could not yet master it. For those first humans, fire was both danger and opportunity. After a storm, when flames swept across the open land, animals might scatter in fear, leaving behind carcasses that the early humans could scavenge. Some scientists believe these ancient people may have discovered that meat left near a fire tasted different, softer, easier to chew, perhaps even safer to eat. Though they could not make fire themselves, they may have lingered near the edges of burned land, cautiously approaching the embers after the flames had died. In these moments, they would have felt both awe and caution, learning slowly that this strange force could change their survival in ways they did not yet understand. Fire was more than just heat or light. It was security. In the darkness of night, predators had the advantage. Sharp eyes glowed in the blackness, and every rustle in the grass could mean danger. But where fire burned, many animals kept their distance. Imagine a small band of humans huddling near the faint glow of a natural fire left smoldering after a storm. The crackling flames offered protection, a barrier between them and the unseen dangers lurking in the shadows. Perhaps they felt safer sleeping a little longer, wrapped in the warmth, while knowing that beyond the light lay the unknown. For the first time, night did not have to be complete darkness. But fire was not always a friend. It could roar out of control, devouring everything in its path. Early humans had to keep a cautious distance, knowing that the flames could spread quickly, turning familiar ground into an unrecognizable wasteland. The balance between curiosity and fear was delicate. A single misstep too close to the flames could mean injury, and without modern healing, such burns were life-threatening. For these people, fire was something to respect, never to challenge. It remained a force of nature, belonging to the world itself, not yet tamed by human hands. And yet, even without mastery, fire changed them. It reshaped the landscapes they roamed, creating new growth after destruction. Burned areas might bring fresh shoots that attracted grazing animals, giving hunters new opportunities. Smoke in the sky may have served as a distant signal, guiding early humans toward places where food or warmth could be found. Slowly, they were learning. Fire had begun to enter their awareness not only as a danger, but as a tool, one they could borrow from nature, even if they could not yet command it. This first spark of understanding planted the seeds of what would one day become one of humanity's greatest achievements. For now, though, these ancient people remained dependent on the natural world to provide fire when it chose. They waited for lightning strikes, for storms to ignite the grasslands, for chance to place them near flames they might use. Each encounter deepened their knowledge, preparing them for a future where fire would no longer be a mystery, but a companion. But here, in this early chapter of human history, fire was still wild, an untouchable force, glimpsed in fleeting moments, shaping survival from a distance. When we think of the dawn of human ingenuity, our minds often drift to the earliest tools. For those living 2.4 million years ago, Survival meant finding ways to extend their abilities beyond what their bodies alone could provide. Their hands, while skillful, were limited. Their teeth, while strong, could not pierce every hide or break every bone. And so they began to look outward, to the stones scattered across the ground, to the branches that littered the forest floor. With time, they discovered that these objects, when shaped or struck, could serve a greater purpose. This was the beginning of technology in its most primal form. The first tools were simple but transformative. Sharp-edged stones, created by striking one rock against another, became cutting implements. With them, humans could slice through meat, carve into bone, and peel away tough plant fibers. What had once taken immense effort could now be achieved with a few careful strikes of stone against flesh. These tools also gave them access to marrow hidden inside bones, a nutrient-rich food source that was otherwise unreachable. This extra nourishment fueled not just their bodies, but perhaps, over generations, even the growth of their brains. In this way, a chipped stone was more than just a tool. It was a key unlocking a new path for humanity. Yet these early tools were not perfect. They were crude and uneven, with jagged edges that dulled quickly. Still, they marked a profound leap. For the first time, humans were actively shaping their environment, bending it to their needs. A broken stone was not just debris, it was potential. Over time, these early people began to recognize patterns, learning which rocks fractured cleanly, which held a sharper edge, and which were strong enough to endure repeated use. This growing awareness was the first spark of innovation, a sign that they were not only surviving, but beginning to think in new, creative ways. The tools extended beyond stone. Sticks could be sharpened into digging instruments, helping them unearth roots and tubers. Bones, too, may have been used as makeshift tools, their pointed ends useful for scraping or piercing. Each new experiment added to a quiet tradition of problem-solving, passed from one generation to the next. Children, watching their elders strike stones together, would imitate the motion, learning by sight and sound. In these small moments, knowledge flowed forward in time, carried not through words, but through action and repetition. The rhythm of tool-making itself may have been soothing, much like the slow crack of stone against stone. Imagine a small group gathered together in the fading light of day, one person chipping at a rock, others watching closely. The sharp clink of stone echoed softly in the air, steady and deliberate. For the listeners, it was more than sound. It was survival taking shape before their eyes. These rhythms of daily life, repeated again and again, built a foundation for the vast innovations that would one day follow. Even in their simplicity, these tools changed the relationship between humans and the natural world. They turned fragile hands into claws, gentle arms into powerful cutters, and curious minds into inventors. For the first time, humans were not just reacting to the challenges of their environment, they were creating solutions. And though their tools were primitive, their significance was immense. These chipped stones marked the first steps in a journey of innovation that would, over countless generations, lead from rough hand axes to towering cities. But here, at the very beginning, they were the sparks of something new. The first signs that humanity was becoming more than just another creature of the wild. For early humans, survival was never a solo endeavor. The vast plains, rivers, and forests of 2.4 million years ago were filled with dangers that no individual could face alone. Predators lurked in every shadow. Resources were scattered and unpredictable, and each day demanded constant vigilance. In this environment, the earliest humans discovered that there was safety in numbers. Small groups, moving together, watching over one another, and sharing resources became the foundation of human survival. These groups were not communities in the way we understand today, with formal rules or houses, but they were communities in the sense of cooperation, trust, and shared life. The bonds formed within these groups shaped not only survival strategies, but also the earliest forms of human emotion and social awareness. These groups were usually tight-knit, consisting of elders, adults, and children, each with roles learned through experience. Elders observed and remembered patterns, where animals grazed, which plants were safe to eat, and which routes led to water. Adults foraged, hunted, and created tools, while children watched, learned, and slowly practiced the skills they would need to survive. Communication was simple, consisting of gestures, sounds, and expressions, yet it carried deep meaning. A warning gesture, a sharp call, or a pointing hand could save lives. In these small moments, trust was cultivated. Early humans were aware that cooperation meant life. Isolation could mean death. In this way, the daily rhythm of community life was not just practical. It was a source of safety and comfort, providing warmth in both the literal and emotional sense. Food, shelter, and protection were shared within the group, and this sharing built strong bonds. When one member discovered a patch of edible roots or a pool with freshwater fish, it was not hoarded. Instead, the food was distributed, often first to the young or the weak. These acts of generosity strengthened social cohesion and ensured that the group could function as a single, resilient unit. In times of scarcity, cooperation became even more critical. Those who hunted successfully might share their catch, and those who gathered plants or insects would divide their findings. Over countless days, this pattern of sharing reinforced a sense of interdependence, teaching early humans that their survival was intimately linked to the well-being of others. Social bonds also provided emotional support, even in an era without language as we know it. Early humans likely expressed care through touch, grooming, and close proximity, forming connections that eased stress and fear. A group huddling together at night, shielding the young from predators, would feel warmth beyond the physical. Laughter, mimicry, and the simple enjoyment of shared experiences, though subtle, may have been present as well, adding depth to these first communities. Such interactions laid the groundwork for empathy, cooperation, and communication, traits that would define humanity far into the future. In essence, survival was intertwined with connection, and connection became a form of resilience. The daily routines of these groups, from foraging to resting, also created opportunities for teaching and learning. Young humans observed the techniques of adults: how to strike a stone for cutting, how to dig for tubers, how to move silently through the grass. Mistakes were corrected gently, success was noted, and knowledge slowly accumulated across generations. In this way, each day was a living classroom. The social structure, though informal, allowed the preservation of wisdom, the sharing of strategies, and the growth of skills that would gradually distinguish humans from other animals. This early education was rooted in observation, repetition, and trust, forming an invisible network of knowledge that passed from one individual to another, binding the group together in both purpose and understanding. As the sun sank behind the distant hills, these small groups would retreat to their shelters, carrying with them not just food, but the experiences, lessons, and stories of the day. Through shared challenges, mutual protection, and the quiet rhythms of life, humans were building more than survival strategies. They were building the first threads of society. These bonds would grow stronger over millennia, evolving into family units, clans, and eventually the complex communities that shape our modern world. Yet even in this earliest chapter, the foundation was clear. Humans are, by nature, social beings. Cooperation, trust, and connection were not luxuries. They were necessities. And in the heart of these first communities lay the enduring truth of humanity, that together we are stronger, wiser, and more capable of facing the unknown. As the sun began to sink beyond the horizon, the world of 2.4 million years ago transformed. Shadows stretched across the plains. The rustle of the wind through the grasses grew quieter, and a gentle chill crept into the air. Nightfall in prehistoric times was not simply darkness. It was a signal, a transition into a world of both rest and hidden dangers. Early humans, having spent the day foraging, hunting, and exploring, would retreat toward their temporary shelters, moving carefully through the fading light. Every movement was measured, every glance alert. The night brought predators, unseen threats, and the unknown. Yet it also brought something else: a vast, unbroken sky, filled with stars, constellations yet to be named, and a gentle, calming rhythm that has existed long before humans ever looked up and wondered. The night sky must have been both awe-inspiring and humbling. Without artificial light, the stars shone in a clarity we rarely see today. Early humans could observe the movement of the sun and moon, perhaps noticing patterns in the changing positions of celestial bodies. The sky itself became a silent guide, a natural clock that helped mark the passage of time. While they had no concept of calendars or astronomy, the cycles of day and night, the phases of the moon, and the patterns of seasonal change were etched into their memory. These observations were critical for survival, influencing when to move, when to hunt, and when to seek water. In this way, The night sky was not only beautiful, it was a quiet teacher, offering guidance and structure in a world without written records or clocks. Nightfall also heightened the reliance on social bonds. The dangers of darkness meant that small groups huddled together, sharing warmth and security. Elders might position themselves at the edges, keeping watch, while the young rested safely in the center. Even without fire, the presence of companions offered reassurance. Simple gestures, soft touches, and low murmurs communicated care and vigilance. In this quiet, dimly lit world, humans learned to trust one another in ways that would echo through millennia. The rhythm of nightfall was a mix of caution and calm, an opportunity to rest while remaining alert, a time when the group strengthened its cohesion simply by being together. The sounds of the prehistoric night were both mesmerizing and instructive. In the distance, the calls of nocturnal predators carried on the wind, while smaller creatures scuttled through undergrowth. The rustle of grass, the whisper of leaves, and the occasional splash from a distant water source created a symphony that the early humans learned to interpret. Each sound could signal danger, opportunity, or simply the pulse of life around them. Listening became a skill as crucial as seeing, and those who could interpret the subtle cues of the night had better chances of survival. The environment itself became a kind of mentor, teaching patience, attentiveness, and respect for the delicate balance of life in a world dominated by both predators and the raw beauty of nature. Evenings may have been moments of reflection. As humans rested in the twilight, the fading light offered glimpses of the landscapes they had traversed, the rivers, the grassy plains, and the distant hills. They may have recognized the places where they had found food or water, where predators lurked, and where shelter was safest. Though they had no written history, these recollections created a living memory, linking the group to its environment and past experiences. The quiet of night allowed for the internalization of lessons learned during the day, strengthening the skills and knowledge that would ensure survival tomorrow. Nightfall was both an ending and a preparation, a gentle pause in the continuous flow of prehistoric life. Finally, the prehistoric sky offered wonder and calm. With darkness fully settled, the stars glimmered across the vast expanse above, unbroken by human structures or light pollution. Perhaps early humans paused for a moment, lying on the ground or sitting near their shelter, absorbing the beauty and enormity of the universe. These moments may have inspired curiosity, awe, and a sense of connection to something larger than themselves. Though survival was always the priority, the night sky reminded them of continuity, of cycles beyond immediate dangers, and of a vast world to explore. As sleep descended and the group drifted into rest, the sky stood sentinel above, a timeless witness to the first human nights, a silent companion in the earliest chapters of our shared story. Life 2.4 million years ago was a constant classroom, and the landscape itself was the teacher. Every day brought new challenges, shifting weather, elusive prey, and lurking predators, and with each challenge, early humans learned. Survival depended on careful observation, patience, and memory. From tracking the footprints of animals in the mud to noticing the subtle change in the wind that might signal rain or a predator's approach, nothing was trivial. Each observation, however small, contributed to a growing body of practical knowledge. Over time, these lessons became instinctual. The humans who could notice the slightest sign of danger or recognize patterns in food availability had a better chance of surviving. In this world, learning was a matter of life and death, and every member of the group, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, contributed to this ongoing education. Early humans honed their senses to a remarkable degree. Sight, hearing, and smell became finely tuned instruments for interpreting their environment. They could detect movement in tall grasses, hear the faintest rustle of a predator, or smell the smoke from a distant fire. Observation was not passive, it was active and intentional. When foraging, they watched for subtle signs of fruit ripening or the tracks of small mammals that could provide sustenance. When resting, they scanned for changes in the sky, noting cloud formations or the direction of the wind. Each detail mattered, and repetition of these observations reinforced patterns and expectations. In this way, the early humans became living libraries of survival knowledge, storing lessons in memory, in action, and in the quiet rhythms of daily life. Mistakes, too, were powerful teachers. A misjudged approach toward a predator or a misidentified plant could be costly, and each error left a lasting impression on the group. Young members watched closely as elders corrected missteps, learning not only what to do, but also what to avoid. Over time, this combination of trial, observation, and guidance created a subtle but enduring wisdom. The humans of this era were not merely reacting to their environment. They were interpreting it, analyzing patterns, and adjusting behaviors accordingly. Their survival strategies were both instinctive and informed by accumulated experience, a delicate balance between intuition and learning that would define our species for millennia to come. Observation also shaped social interaction and communication. Gestures, calls, and shared behaviors were part of a complex system of teaching and alerting one another to danger or opportunity. For example, a specific hand gesture could indicate the presence of a water source, while a sharp cry might signal the approach of a predator. In this way, survival knowledge became social knowledge. Lessons were not only internalized individually, but transmitted across the group, ensuring that all members, young and old, benefited from accumulated experience. The act of teaching and observing became intertwined, creating bonds that strengthened both social cohesion and practical skill. The environment itself offered continual lessons in adaptation. Seasonal changes required flexible strategies. Different plants were available at different times, animals migrated, and weather conditions shifted. Early humans learned to anticipate these cycles, adjusting movement patterns, foraging techniques, and shelter choices. Observation extended beyond immediate survival to understanding broader rhythms. The group became attuned not only to the dangers around them, but but to the flow of the world itself, recognizing patterns in nature that guided their actions. In this sense, their lives were a dialogue with the environment, a constant process of noticing, interpreting, and responding with intelligence and care. By the end of each day, the lessons of survival were etched deeply into memory and habit. Each successful hunt, each wisely chosen shelter, and each careful observation of the sky or landscape reinforced a growing understanding of the world. Mistakes were remembered and shared, successes repeated and taught. Over countless days and generations, this accumulation of knowledge allowed humans to. Nightfall, in particular, offered a moment of gentle stillness. As darkness spread across the plains and forests, humans retreated to their shelters, their small groups providing warmth, protection, and companionship. The stars above, brilliant and unchanging, offered a sense of continuity and wonder. Perhaps they gazed upward, as we do now, feeling a quiet connection to something larger than themselves. In these moments, the lessons of the day were absorbed, not through words, but through reflection, observation, and the simple rhythm of life. It was here, beneath the ancient sky, that they began to understand the patterns of the world around them. Over time, the small innovations of early humans, sharpened stones, careful observation, shared shelter, and cooperative hunting, laid the foundations for everything that would follow. The spark of ingenuity, the bond of community, and the awareness of the natural world were all building blocks for a future that stretched far beyond the savannas and river valleys of prehistory. Each day lived successfully was a quiet victory, a testament to the resilience and intelligence that would define the human story. In reflecting on these early days, we recognize not only how far we have come, but also the timeless qualities that connect us to our distant ancestors: curiosity, adaptability, and the enduring power of togetherness. Now, as you let your mind drift softly, consider the connection across millions of years. The early humans who walked beneath vast skies, huddled by rivers, and learned from every leaf, stone, and star are not so different from us in spirit. Their survival required attention, patience, and care. Their days were filled with challenges, small triumphs, and the gentle rhythms of life. By imagining their world, we not only honor their existence, but we also touch the essence of humanity: curiosity, observation, cooperation, and resilience. The echoes of their lives remain in us, in the habits, knowledge, and instincts that persist through the millennia. So, as you sink deeper into relaxation, let the calm and rhythm of ancient life surround you. Picture the quiet rivers, the warm shelters, the crackle of distant fire, and the endless sky above. Let the journey through this prehistoric day fade gently, leaving a sense of peace, wonder, and connection. In these reflections, the lives of the first humans become a lullaby of survival, ingenuity, and timeless resilience. Sleep now, knowing that you carry forward the echoes of ancient life, drifting softly into dreams under the same stars that guided the very first humans long ago.